I didn't understand the fact that once I opened up a clinic, I was no longer a physical therapist first.
Hello, welcome to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Each episode, we bring you a conversation with leaders across the healthcare industry, exploring topics ranging from new treatment techniques and interventions to novel service delivery methods and business models. And now your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehab Practice Solutions, a leader in patient engagement and retention strategy. Let's explore the possibilities of a new healthcare.
Well, hello again. Welcome to another episode of the Better Outcomes Show. I'm your host, Rafi Salazar from Rehab Practice Solutions. You know, I was talking the other day with a friend of mine, and he was telling me he runs a business that's outside of healthcare. So we were just shooting back and forth some questions and answers, kind of what's working for him, what's working for us, what we're doing, what he's doing. He told me he's spending X number of dollars, a lot of money, on marketing. And I said, oh, okay, like how much is that generating you in the form of leads and conversions? What's your conversion rate? What's all that? And he said, I don't know. I just know I'm spending this much money on the marketing every month. I said, yeah, but how much revenue is that bringing in? He said, I don't know. I couldn't track that for you. So I went on my little soapbox here, but I'm going to share it here because I think it's very relevant, especially in healthcare, especially if you're trying to go direct to consumer or direct to patient with your marketing efforts. Let's say, for example, you're spending X number of dollars, let's call it $100 a week on advertising, $400 a month, which is pretty low, but let's say you're doing that. How many patients is that $400 a month bringing you? And then how much revenue on the back end do you stand to make off of those patients? If you don't know those numbers, you should not be spending a single dime on marketing. So here's an example from a clinic that I worked with in the past, and I'm just going to break down the numbers. We'll walk you through it real quick, and then we'll dive right into the episode, which is talking with a private practice owner who sold his practice, and now he's doing something really cool with EMGs. But let's just say, for example, you run an ad for 3 days, and this I'm just going to read you from what we've done here. So it was 3 days that we ran this ad. That generated 9 leads for $21.14 total ad spend. So we spent about $2.35 per lead. The client closed it was 33, so we closed 3 of those visits. 3 visits scheduled off of those 9 leads. So that's that. Now, they averaged a 93% arrival rate on their evals. So if you did the math, that means that they averaged out off of these 3, they could expect about 2.79 visits. We'll round down to 2 since you can't have 0.79 patients show up. Typically, this clinic averaged 12 visits per new consult over 6 weeks. So 1 consult equals 12 visits, 8 this month and 4 in the following month. So conservative revenue based off of their last 10 EOBs for the payers that were there were approximately $90 visit. One was a little over, one was a little under. So we'll call it 90. So the final numbers were, after 3 days and $21 in ad spend, they had 2 new patients, 24 scheduled visits, $2,160 in total potential revenue. And that was $1,440 in revenue this month over the first 4 weeks, and $720 the next month, all for about $21.14 in ad spend. So obviously, if you ask, is that marketing effort worth it? The answer is absolutely. But if you don't know any of those numbers beforehand, there's no way to evaluate that. Like, sure, now that we know that it'll take $21, in this one example, to get 2 patients, it'll generate around $2,100 in revenue. So you're talking like 100 times ad spend, right? It makes sense. And we can just, the way I look at marketing is, if you find something that works, you're putting $1 in, you're making $1.50 out, then you just back a truck full of cash up there and you dump it in that machine, right? But if you don't know the numbers, you don't know if you're dumping the money in the right place or not. So just a little bit of story from my own life and why it's important to know your numbers. If you want to know more specifically and kind of get really nitpicky about it, we do have a webinar series on the website, rehabilitation.com. You can go to webinars and webcasts, and it's called the Direct to Consumer Marketing web series. I think there's like 8 or 9 videos and webinars in there that walk you through everything from the positioning to the numbers to the actual implementation of a marketing system direct to consumer. If you want to learn more and have a chat about it, you can head on over to marketing.rehabilipracticesolutions.com. Schedule a time to chat with me. I'd love to talk with you about your clinic and if there's a way we can help you. Alrighty, moving on. This week, we are sitting down with Nathan Shields. He is the co-owner of Rise Diagnostics. He's a physical therapist, and he does EMGs, needle EMGs. That's why his company is called Rise Diagnostics, right? We have a conversation this week about sort of a wide breadth of issues in private practice healthcare. Nathan shares a good bit of information about consulting and the role that growing as a business owner and the role of consultants and getting advice and working on the business instead of in the business, and what that did to his clinic and practice as he prepared to sell. Now, he was involved in a roll-up where they ended up selling. We had talked to Will Humphreys a while back about a roll-up and what that means, so you can go back and check out that episode if you want to. But basically, he was able to sell his practice, Nathan, for a lot more than the national average. And that was because of partly what they did with the roll-up, but then also the way his business was running, in that he was not necessarily in the practice every day treating patients. He was managing the practice. And he even said that at some point in this interview, he said, I did not realize when I started this practice that I was no longer a physical therapist first and a practice owner second. I was a practice owner or a business owner first and that happened to be a physical therapist, which I think is a big insight. So anyways, then we dove in a little bit to this kind of just my own curiosity and nerdiness here about EMGs and the ins and outs of running an EMG diagnostic practice as a physical therapist, kind of the ins and outs of that, how does it work, referral-wise, all of that kind of thing, which was just an interesting conversation. So hopefully you find this conversation insightful. Without further ado, here's Nathan Shields talking about being a business owner, a practice owner, and then running a unique or a niche practice in and of itself in EMG and diagnostics. Well, hey, Nathan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me on, Rafi.
Yeah, thanks for being on. I'm excited to talk with you about, well, all things PT business and then really focusing on this whole idea of EMGs. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about yourself, your PT journey, and then what led you to doing what you're doing now at Rise Diagnostics.
Yeah, sure. Well, Nathan Shields, I've been a physical therapist since 1999, I guess. Opened my first clinic in 2002 out in Arizona, and eventually expanded, opened up another clinic in a small town outside of Phoenix called Florence, Arizona. Brought on someone to manage that and run that for me. He eventually bought it from me, and then we opened up another clinic, and through all these little chess piece movements, we decided to merge our clinics together. So we had 4 and 5 clinics at one time come together in the southeast portion of Phoenix. And what's interesting about our journey, and it's very comparable to a lot of PT owners out there who have suffered and struggled, is we went about it on our own for a long time, longer than I should have. And if I were to talk to my younger self, I would be definitely recommending getting some coaching or consulting earlier on in my business ownership journey. But once we did get some coaching and consulting, we really started seeing things change for the better, both in terms of personal life, business development of leaders within our company, just simply taking the time to work on our businesses resulted in making great progress. No longer was I waking up at 4 a.m. to get notes done before I saw my first patients at 6:30 or 7, and then get home at 7 or 8 o'clock at night and thus miss my newborn baby being awake for 3 to 4 days at a time. I don't know, maybe some of the listeners can relate to that, but or going on vacation and getting phone calls in the middle of vacation 2 and 3 times a day, because of course when you're gone, all hell
Yeah,
breaks
that's when
loose.
things break.
Right. Yeah. So just to see significant transformations in our business over that time, and stop me if I'm going too far into this
No, no,
stuff,
this is
but
all
this is
super
just,
helpful.
yeah, my journey as it relates to business ownership. Um, I really started to make a change when I started focusing on the business, and it's funny because I talk to owners now who come in to get coaching with me, and they say, "Well, I just want to treat, right? I want to treat and I want to have a business that runs." And I didn't understand the fact that once I opened up a clinic, I was no longer a physical therapist first.
Yeah.
We tend to see ourselves as therapists who own a business, when the narrative needs to immediately change as soon as you hang that shingle to, I'm a business owner who happens to be a physical therapist. And even now, it still takes time for me to change that narrative in my head when people say, "What do you do?" Well, I bumble around. I say, "Well, I'm a physical therapist by trade, but I haven't treated a patient in I don't know how many years."
Yeah,
you
exactly.
know,
But
and
it's
so,
interesting, right? Like
um,
as clinicians, we go into healthcare from this sense of, call it a calling or a mission or a vocation or whatever, but
sure,
like our identity is very much tied in this purpose of helping people, right? Like this is what we
mhm,
all, almost who we are. So
yeah,
it's very difficult to kind of decouple yourself from that. Like, oh,
it
I'm
is.
not the guy treating patients anymore. I'm the guy managing a team or making sure the business metrics are where they need to be or whatever.
Right. Right. And we never had any training on that, right? We never got any business training on how to run a business. And so we can continue to see ourselves as therapists first. And what I see as I'm coaching patients or coaching clients, PT owners specifically, and it's a mindset that had to shift in myself as well, as I had to recognize that I was no longer just a physical therapist who owned a clinic, but I was a owner that is a physical therapist. And once I made that transition, is when I started seeing changes in my business and started making business decisions that were in the best interest of the business, that ultimately helped me personally as an owner, both in my personal life. I had more free time. I actually had more profits, and my effect on the community and on the number of patients that I was able to influence increased, because
Yeah.
I wasn't treating them one on one. Now my influence could be greatly expanded, um, simply by coaching the physical therapists that worked under me, right?
Yeah.
And if they're doing better and getting better results and seeing more patients and selling better plans of care and getting patients to come in at a greater frequency in their benefits to get greater results faster, then my influence and my effect in the community and my surroundings was greater. And so I definitely see, as I'm coaching clients, as they don't really make a lot of big changes in their businesses until they make that mindset shift, that they need to make business decisions first that will better influence the clinic and not let patient care hold them back. Honestly, that's what it's doing. And so made some of those changes. Of course, things went well. My business partner and I entertained a number of offers to sell over the years, which was a really good experience. And I recommend, if anyone's coming at you to buy your business, I recommend doing the song and dance with them for a little bit,
Yeah. Go
just
through the
to
motions.
just go through the motions and understand what it's like, even if you're not really planning on selling. And I honestly wouldn't accept your first offer because better offers come down the road.
Yeah.
But um,
But especially for someone who hasn't even been thinking that way, like just getting a request of, bullet points of we need these metrics and we need, your payer mix and we need all these, forms and financials, like that in and of itself is enough to jar some people into, okay, I need to get my business butt in gear and
right.
get some of this stuff in order.
Yeah, because some of those things you're thinking, that's not a big deal. I don't need. I mean, why should I have all my insurance contracts on file?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, as someone who's going to buy you wants to see your contracts, right?
Yeah.
Should I have a certificate of good stand? We had to provide. I never knew they existed, but there were certificates of good standing with the state of Arizona that they want to. I didn't know they existed, so I had to go through the Department of Commerce and find those things. And then your taxes and your financials, all that stuff. Nonetheless, we finally started. We got a lot of that stuff together, and a friend approached us. Let's see, we sold about 4.5, 5 years ago. A friend approached us probably a year before that, and said, "Hey, I'm selling some of my clinics, and I have an offer on the table, but I know I could get more for my clinics if I grouped a number of other clinics together, loosely held clinics who presented themselves as one on the marketplace. We could get more for our clinics than if we could just sold them ourselves."
Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, and not knowing who's listening and if they understand, but many times you'll get what's called a multiple of your EBITDA
Yeah.
when you go to sell. Just to make things a little bit easier, it could be a multiple of, say, your bottom line profit,
Yeah.
essentially.
And typically we're sitting around like, well, it depends where part of the country you're at, but like it's, three to four times
Yeah,
EBITDA
maybe.
is pretty standard.
Yeah, pretty standard. And I think even 5 or 6 years ago, I might have been talking 2 or 3,
Yeah.
but 3 or 4 times your bottom line profit for would be a purchase price, or like a ballpark figure for what your purchase price would be. But we knew if we got a number of clinics together, that could be like 8, 9, and 10 times multiple of your purchase price. Radical difference, right? So we started calling friends and acquaintances, who's interested in selling. And we just kind of have had this loosely held non-disclosure agreement between all of us that if we came to the market and achieved a double-digit multiple, a 10x multiple on our EBITDA, that we would agree to sell. And so we got 16 clinics together between Southern California, Arizona, and Louisiana, of all places.
Yeah. Jump a couple states.
Yeah, exactly. And we decided to sell. And this was, like I said, we had entertained a number of offers before. We knew exactly what we wanted in terms of like a dollar figure and what the exchange was like. And we weren't going to do any kind of payouts, were incentive-based payouts. It was going to be
Yeah, like earnouts at the end or
no
something like that.
earnouts, none of that stuff. Don't do that. It was just strictly 80/20. You're going to give us cash, and some of us will agree to stay on to run the administrative part of it for a period of time, and the 20% will come in stock later on. So we sold out to a private equity company in Arizona. In the meantime, like all this time and a little bit before we sold, Will, my business partner, and I decided to get into diagnostics. Right. And so we had talked to a company called Hands-On Diagnostics. They're out of New York, and they trained us on EMGs and musculoskeletal ultrasound. And this was probably about 8 years ago. It was well prior to our sale. And we were looking for other avenues of income and that kind of stuff. And we'd considered the typical things, whether it was having a gym model, right, or selling supplements, or
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. Selling
all that
something
stuff.
clinic, or having
Yeah,
a
yeah, yeah.
program. Yeah.
And we really liked this idea simply because it was within our scope of practice, and it could be integrated into the patient care, right?
Yeah.
And so we got into that. I, in particular, took over the diagnostics portion of the business. On an organizational chart, we had a separate organization altogether for diagnostics business. And so I came over to the other side to that organization and ran the diagnostic side, while Will handled some of the day-to-day stuff in our PT business. And so I was focused on developing that. And Will had this bright idea of doing diagnostics in Alaska because they reimburse
There
very
aren't that
well.
many. Yeah.
Honestly, that's what it was. We were sitting in a conference, and we had talked to a friend at lunchtime. He was from Alaska doing diagnostics and told us what they were getting reimbursed. And we're like, that's crazy. Well, Will took it a step further and spent the rest of the afternoon like writing down numbers. How are we gonna get to Alaska, write it off on the business, and maybe make some extra cash? And so honestly, that's where it started. And we just started working that way. I started coming up to Alaska once or twice a week, or a month, sorry, from Arizona to do EMGs in an area where there was a huge demand for them. And business started getting busier. Hired on someone to market for me, and started getting busier still. And my wife just one time said, "Well, maybe we just need to move up there. I'm kind of sick of you commuting
Yeah.
to Alaska a couple times a month." And then I was occasionally going to New York for training. So it was a big decision. There was a lot that went into it, but
Yeah.
eventually we moved up to Alaska 6 years ago, and been doing diagnostics up here since then. And not any PT actually. We just have a diagnostics clinic, a small office that does EMGs a couple times a week for the local providers. And me and my family have been up here for 6 years. And then we sold, like I said, we sold our clinics about 4.5 years ago. And since then, I've been doing a podcast just like you. I do some business coaching and consulting. I do annual strategic planning sessions for business owners. Just did one for a nonprofit charity organization this last week, which was fun.
Nice.
So, and getting into a lot of real estate investment stuff. So it's been quite a journey, because I was like that physical therapist that wanted to get some coaching to improve my business so I could just treat
Yeah,
patients,
exactly.
right? I take all that stuff off my hands. That's the headache, and I'll just treat patients. But once I got into that stuff, now I'm kind of, I've treated patients here and there over the past couple of years, on and off, and it's not fulfilling anymore, honestly. Like, I get more fulfillment teaching PT owners how to become profitable and changing their lives, because I know when I'm changing their lives and helping them become profitable, then their providers are providing better care. They're
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
more productive. And when I mean more productive, they're seeing their patients more frequently for the full plan of care and not discharging early and that kind of stuff. And that gets me excited when I get to help other PT owners who used to be in a situation, or who are in the situation that I used to be in, right? With little free time, a lot of family demands, no vacation time, and help them free themselves from that. That gets me super pumped.
Yeah, no. And I think, as somebody, so I bought a clinic a while back because I figured, like, what else am I going to do? I'm going to buy a clinic.
Why not?
And it wasn't being a solo consultant for years in the like independent healthcare consultancy. Like, it's a lot different. And I was telling somebody the other day, like, I was used to kicking in the door at an organization, be like, "You're screwing up this, and that. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Make sure that the numbers are right when I get back."
Right.
And then when you actually have a clinic and you've got these people that are coming to you, you're like, "Oh man, I'm the guy that's like fixing. I'm supposed to be fixing this." But
Yeah.
I talk to clinic owners all the time who just they want to keep doing their clinic thing. They want to treat all the patients, and they kind of want to let the team manage itself, and it's like, at some level,
Yeah.
like, you need to be, I refer to it as like a moral imperative. Like, the highest use of your time is leading and developing the team, right? And that
Totally.
shift is very, very hard for folks, like I said, that view ourselves as clinicians, or like our
Yeah.
identity is tied up as almost healers. Not to
Yeah.
sound chintzy or anything like that, but that we went to school to help people, and it's hard not
Well,
to
yeah,
want to do
yeah.
that.
And when you say went to school, let's be honest about it. You spent probably 20 years of your life, if not
Yeah,
more, all in order to obtain this pinnacle of being a physical therapist. Like, that's the ultimate goal of 25 years of training, if you look back on it. I'm going to elementary school, junior high, high school, college, graduate school, so I could be blank physical therapist,
yeah,
right? And now I'm coming at you as a coach, and you as a consultant as well, and saying, you're not a physical therapist anymore. I mean, that's a strike to your identity. It's like your purpose, your identity, everything you've built up to is like, what are you talking about? I'm a physical therapist. What else do I do if I'm not a physical therapist? And I think that's where the mindset has a hard time shifting. It's easy for me to say, you're not a physical therapist anymore. You're a business owner who happens to own a physical therapy clinic. That shift isn't easily accepted and understood. It takes some
yeah.
time.
Well, I wonder how much of that too is like, how many of us have spent our days in the clinic running around treating patients. I mean, like, what is the manager doing, kicking his feet up in there? in the office all day, and we don't want to be that, like we want to be in
Yeah.
there with everybody else treating and getting our hands dirty and all that
Yeah.
camaraderie as
Well,
well.
and the funny thing is, as I'm talking to owners, is there is that fear every time, no matter what. Like if I'm not treating patients with my team, if I'm not boots on the ground, what are they going to think of me?
Yeah.
Right? They That's always a fear, and almost always never comes to pass. Because when the message is relayed appropriately, and they really come to understand it, it is, I need to step back from treating in order to run a better business. And when I do so, it will benefit everybody here in this room. And typically, the people who are on board and value aligned with you will nod their heads and say, "Yep, that's right. There is crap that's going on in our clinic, in our business right now that you're not taking care of because you're treating patients."
Yeah,
And they
exactly.
see it and they know it. And when you tell them, "Here's my solution, I'm not going to treat patients anymore. I'm going to fix the crap that's going down," then the people who are aligned, remember that qualifier, the people who are aligned are the ones who will say, "Yeah, I get it." The people who aren't aligned and are like, you're just you just want to kick your feet up in the office or whatnot, they don't usually last too long, honestly.
Yeah.
When I'm started making changes for the better of my business, the people who weren't aligned, they
Yeah,
rose
they
to the occasion.
self-selected out. Yeah.
They self-selected. Well, it took hard. I had to learn the hard way that you need to fire fast and hire slow. But I should have fired them faster than I did. Never regretted firing anyone that I did, and I wish I would have done it sooner. But I had to go through that process, right? And they self-selected, and I ended up having to let them go and found better replacements that were aligned. And then I got better at interviewing and determining what my values were and what I was looking for in an employee, or I should say a team member, right? And so that's a learning process.
Yeah.
But during this entire time, the business got better, my life got better, my opportunities for my employees got better. That they now had leadership paths because I was pulling myself out of what essentially was the clinic director position. Now they had a way to grow into the clinic director position. And I hated marketing. And now as I'm working on the business, I had a PTA who loved marketing. I'm like, "Okay, hey, you can PTA, but I'll pay you to even go out and not PTA, but market for me." And she was
Exactly.
all aglow. She was like she thought that was the dream job. And I mean, someone has to like marketing. It's not me. So I'll pay you to go do it. And so all these opportunities arose. And when we went to sell, of those 16 clinics, ours were four of them. We had the highest profit margins of any of the other owners. Our team, our culture, the leaders that went into the next organization that bought us came from our clinics. I mean, we were really proud of what we developed over that time. And it was because we decided to start working specifically on the business.
Yeah. So you mentioned it earlier, but let's go back to that. What was the deciding factor that finally pushed you to make that call to a coach or a consultant, or say like, "Oh, I need some help outside of just treating more patients." I think when things are going wrong in the business, we're like, "Oh, we'll just treat more patients and we'll be fine."
Yeah. Well, I will say we tried once the wrong way to hire like an office manager over the multiple clinics,
Uh-huh.
without giving her any training. She just came with a good resume and we didn't really hold her accountable. We just kind of did what we treated and she managed the office stuff. That didn't go over well.
Yeah.
Right. And then, one time Will said, "Hey, I'm going to go to this training up in Seattle for business consulting. I think he paid 1,000 or 2,000 bucks for it, but I can bring someone else for free. Why don't you come with?" And so we went up to this training and we got just some nominal business training, right? And it hit me there. And you'd have to ask Will what his feelings were at the time, but he agreed. But I remember sitting there and say, uh, I just had an opportunity from perspective, to say, I can't keep doing this anymore. Whatever's happening now just can't keep going on. And I had said that in different ways over the years. Like and I'd say that to patients that I knew well or friends and family, like if I'm still doing this in another 5 to 10 years, I'm going to get burned out. Right. And so when this consulting group, gave me the proposal, which was tens of thousands of dollars to do business coaching with them, I looked at it like, well, I've got to do something, and I'm willing to pay the money to make the changes that I need to make so that my business runs better and becomes more of an ideal scene that I want. And so we made that commitment financially. We started getting the training. We went to Seattle on a regular basis to get the consulting that we needed, and eventually paid for consulting for our leaders to get the same training that we did. And once we did that, it was, geez, I wouldn't say it wasn't hands off, but we were getting close. By the time we sold, we had a solid leadership team in place, and things were going pretty well. It was a good situation. So it was that point where I finally understood, something's got to change. I just have to, you don't do anything usually until the pain is so much that you actually have to do something. And I guess I was at that point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's always funny to hear kind of what drives people's decisions. Some people come at it from different angles, but I think a lot of people are like at the position where they're like, I just can't keep doing this. They realize something has to change. I've done this in my own career too. Like something has to change. I don't know what to do. Like what am I going to do? And you got to find somebody who can get you there.
Right. And what's funny is that it wasn't, I wasn't having financial issues. Like financially, we were doing fine. We were doing great. Right. I wouldn't say great. It's not, we were living high on the hog, but we were doing fine. Financials weren't the issue. My lifestyle and what I expected out of my life was not where I wanted it to be. And a lot of that might have to do with the fact that I had 6 kids at the time, and now I have 7.
Wow, yeah.
So yeah, there was a demand on my family time and stuff like that. So that definitely was a part of it. It was just, I wasn't experiencing what I wanted to experience, is what I dreamed a business owner would live like.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's talk a little bit. So you did the consulting, you got the business running well. You've talked a little bit about that involved leadership development on your team part, kind of delegating on your part. When it came time to sell, you were doing the diagnostics before. I'm assuming you just carved that out of the sale, and that whoever bought you didn't purchase the diagnostics portion, or did you just go ahead and just, reconstitute it in Alaska and keep trucking?
No, so we set it up organizationally. We had our separate LLCs all set up. So the diagnostics was a separate LLC.
Okay.
Right.
From the beginning.
Had its own tax ID number. We also had an umbrella company at this time. So there was this holding company at the top, if you could imagine an organizational chart, a holding company at the top, and that's where Will and I lived, and our billing company was up in this umbrella company. So all of the 4 clinics, this might be interesting to those who have multiple clinics.
Yeah.
But the 4 clinics would all pay 15 or 18, maybe even 20% of their revenues up to the umbrella company, and out of that we would pay our billers and our salaries, our executive salaries, out of that umbrella company. And then the clinics had their own financials outside of that made money.
Yeah.
So that's how it ran. And underneath that umbrella company were the 4 distinct clinics, a real estate holding company that owned one of our clinics, office space, and the diagnostics company. And yeah, so when they bought the company, we just carved out the real estate holding and the diagnostics. And I don't even think they took the umbrella company. They just bought those 4 LLCs,
the clinics themselves.
Clinics. Yeah, that's a long-winded answer to your question.
Yeah, no, it's helpful. So, I guess then, so you sold, and you just said it was more than you would have gotten normally.
Yeah.
What made you decide, one, I'm already up here in Alaska doing EMGs, so I'm going to keep doing that. And then I guess that's the question. So what made you decide to keep doing that after you sold?
Yeah. So I was headed down this path anyway, and that is to become board certified.
Yeah.
In the PT realm, it's to become ECS, electromyography certifications, certified specialist. And so I was heading down that path already. And I'm not one for change. Like the idea of just stopping doing that probably never came to mind. Like
Yeah.
I was headed down that path, and I was just going to keep going down that path because I was already on that path. So I simply continue to study. You have to hit so many EMGs. I can't remember how many it is, 500, something like that. And then you have to submit for the exam and take the board exam. So I was doing all this, getting ready to do this prior to the sale. And so it just continued after the sale. And I was doing all those tests up here in Alaska. And so I just kept going down that path, took the board exam, and eventually passed the board exam. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Congratulations. Yeah.
And I can proudly say I'm the only board certified electromyographer PT in the state of Alaska. As of now, this is 2023. My team member, Casey Buckland, he's taken the board exam just a few weeks ago. So hopefully he's the second.
Oh, cool deal. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. And so, yeah, I decided to keep it going. And it was something that, number one, kept me busy. Number two, just provided a little bit of cash flow. So, it was nice. I just kept doing it.
Yeah. It's funny, you talk to people, and I talked to a guy the other day who he's on the health tech side of things, did a startup, sold it for multiple millions, tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
And he's still cranking away on something else. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, well, like, what am I going to do? Like, sit and retire? Like, there's some people that are just, they're going to keep building. They're going to keep working. They're going to keep doing something, because it isn't so much about the money so much as it is like, I'm already on the path to do this, or I already had this idea and now I've got the freedom to do it and not have to worry so much about it. So it's interesting to hear like, oh, you sold and now you're doing an EMG company, like you're doing diagnostics.
Well, and you also hear the other side of the stories occasionally where people sell their companies, make a lot of money, and then blow all the cash within a couple of years and have to find something else to do.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
And I didn't want to be that person. But it's been, and this is a real situation for people who are looking to sell, is what are you going to do afterwards? It's a real existential question. Like,
yeah,
this is almost 5 years now, 2023, we sold in 2018. And I'm still kind of looking for my next thing, if you will. I'm doing a lot of these things. I'm not really busy at any of them. Like I have the EMG clinic, but I'm not doing the EMGs myself. I have real estate, that's relatively passive. I do the business coaching and consulting, but I mean, I'm not going 40 hours a week coaching people every week.
Yeah.
So, and it's not something I really look to scale up because the limitations are my time, and I still want to maintain a certain lifestyle. So yeah, it's like, what do I do next is always like, I'm still kind of searching. And so for people who are looking to sell, it's a really important question. Like, what are you going to do after you sell? Like you need to know that ahead of time, because Will and myself have been running around looking for things to do. He's one that's been much more busy than I am.
Yeah.
he's got a billing company now.
Yeah. He's running here, there, and everywhere. He was on the show a couple months ago. So
right. So he's got all kinds of stuff going on. But yeah, those weren't things that he was expecting to do when we sold. He just kind of fell into them. And it's kind of, if you are the type of person who has had a successful ownership in a company, you have the personality where you just expect to produce. I mean, I need to produce.
Yeah.
And if I'm not, then I question what I'm doing. Honestly, on this earth, kind of, it's like an existential question. What am I doing if I'm not producing? But also the money, it can run out. So I didn't make that much money that I can just live high on the hog for the rest of my life.
Not like a billionaire over here.
No, yeah, I still want to fly first class, and I don't think I can afford it. So I still have dreams of making more money so I can fly first class whenever I want.
Yeah.
So that's my dream. That's my next goal.
Yeah. Well, those tickets to and from Alaska are a little expensive too.
Yeah, yeah, especially when you got 7 kids and hauling them back and forth with
Yeah,
you.
7. Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got 5 right now. My oldest is 8. My youngest is 1. We're kind of in the thick of
Oh
it.
my.
So,
Oh yeah, you are. Yeah, that's exactly what I was dealing with when I'm talking about lifestyle was not fun.
yeah.
Between owning a clinic for full time and having a bunch of young ones in the house, I totally feel your pain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's fun though. It keeps us entertained if nothing else, right?
Right? Right.
All righty. So, you've kind of laid out a little bit. So you don't need to be EMG board certified, do you, to run EMGs, or do you need to practice that under the supervision of somebody who is? How does that work? And maybe it's different from state to state.
There is some of that,
Yeah.
right? Most of the states, I want to say 48 out of the 50 states are okay with PTs doing EMGs.
Okay.
Oklahoma is the only one that stands out that doesn't allow it.
And that's
But
probably because
most,
some lobbying by some other interests that they don't like
well,
it,
yeah,
APA or something.
it's like the physical therapy board is also under the medical board,
Yeah.
and so the doctors get to decide what the PTs can do
Yeah.
essentially. And it's not a separate board, and so, but in most states you can do EMGs under the Practice Act. I think in California, you have to, in order to start billing insurances, you have to take a state board exam,
Huh. Interesting.
which is a little bit different. And of course, you would expect that from California.
Yeah, exactly.
And but it's not as hard as the national exam. And then, but here's the thing is, depending on the state, well, I will say this in general, Medicare won't pay you full Medicare reimbursement rates until you are board certified. So
So
if
there's
you
some
are
kind
going
of
to see,
reduction code involved.
yeah, you get the technical component and not the professional component. So it ends
Yeah.
up being, I don't know, $150, $120 versus 400 and 500 bucks, right? So you can only get the technical component for doing it. And then depending on the state, Medicaid might not pay for it until you're board certified. But if you do it, and this was what I was able to do, is I found a nurse practitioner that was willing to supervise. And then we could bill under her and get full reimbursement. And then I could pay a flat rate to her for her supervision, her insurance, her billing
Yeah.
expenses, that kind of stuff, to supervise my tests, right? So that's how we went about it, and in order to get more reimbursement. And then it's from state to state, it's kind of a fight. In some insurance companies, like Blue Cross Blue Shield in Arizona, will pay for it in Arizona, and then they might not in Florida, right? So it kind of varies state to state. In
Yeah,
that
you're gonna have to do a
regard,
lot of due diligence on that piece. But
yeah,
like from a standpoint of, like, I guess getting the business or getting that component of the practice up and running, you need obviously the training. You can't just go out and start. You can't buy an EMG machine, so you need some training,
oh, you
ideally some
can.
supervision.
You can buy an EMG machine. You won't know how to use it, but
Okay,
you can.
like
You
ethically, you should get some training before you
Yeah,
go out and start
exactly.
stabbing people.
Right.
So you get that piece. From the marketing standpoint to the community to referral sources,
Yeah.
was there pushback from doctors or other organizations, maybe neurologists or something like that? Or was there, because I'm thinking the people that we refer
Yeah.
out for EMGs, like, was there pushback from those other providers?
Yeah.
Or were you going like directly to a DPC or something like a primary care provider and saying, "Hey, we can do these," and it's
Yeah.
whatever. You don't have to wait 3 months to get in with a neurologist.
Well, this is it's a good adjunct to the prior question, because what you can do, well, and let me add to this question, but answer your question first.
Yeah.
Yeah, depending on where you are, you'll get some pushback, and neurologists aren't going to be happy with you. Some pain medicine docs might be 50-50 on it. I know in Idaho, where my friend is, and up here in Alaska, the local neurologists complained to the board, and they had to do some quote unquote investigation in order to confirm whether or not we could actually do EMGs under our Practice Act. And that delayed payment from my Medicaid
For a
EMGs
while, I'm sure, yeah.
for like a year and a half, right? But it was a fight, and there are lots of PT members across the nation that will help you fight. that kind of stuff. So if you're into it, don't be afraid. There are plenty of experienced people who know how to handle this kind of stuff that will help you fight that fight. So you'll get some pushback. When I did it in Arizona, the common comments were, I didn't know you guys could do that stuff. And they kind of blew it off. They like thought that maybe we were just introducing orthotics or something like that, dry needling in our clinic. And so they didn't think we were very expert at it. The people who really loved us were the mid-level practitioners in rural settings.
Oh yeah.
So, and I saw that in Arizona. I see that up here in Alaska a lot. But the PAs, the nurse practitioners, they, especially in the rural settings, when they know that my patient's going to have to, number one, wait 2 months to get one, and then drive an hour, hour and a half, 2 hours to go get it. Wait, you guys are already in town, and I can get an EMG this week. Well, they absolutely loved us. And the primary care physicians as well in those rural settings really loved us. But even up here in Alaska, where we're in our town, it's not totally rural, but most of my referrals come from one of two sources: the mid-level practitioners, or an orthopedic group that doesn't already have neurology on staff.
Okay.
Like those orthopedic groups feed us a ton across the country. I know podiatrists are they favor EMGs a lot, and so they like to work with PTs. So I know plenty of PTs that work with podiatrists, ortho groups, and mid-level practitioners across the country. And again, it just kind of depends on where you're at and how they look at you. But to say all that, one way to get around the reimbursement issue is to do EMGs for those physicians on site. And so you can set up like that and just start doing tests. They fill your schedule with their clients, 5, 6 EMGs in a day or more. And you come in, you do the test, you leave, and then you just bill them
directly, whatever the rate is or whatever.
Yeah, 150, 200, $250 per test to just do those tests. And that way you get reimbursed. They take care of all the billing. They take care of all the denials. If they come up, they take care of all that stuff. And so, and you don't have to necessarily do credentialing per se. You just have to show that you're licensed as a PT. And then in the state, and if you're contracted like that, they don't necessarily, I don't know what they have to do regarding credentialing, but it's usually not that difficult.
Yeah. Because then everything's going under their NPIs, their business organization, all of that kind of stuff, and they're kind of taking it.
So that's another way to do it. Like you can do it in house. You could do it in your PT clinic, and even test your patients with the physician's approval. Typically, you want to have that communication. Like, I think they would do well with an EMG. Can't tell if this is a carpal tunnel issue versus a radiculopathy. Wondering how much nerve damage is happening with this guy with leg pain and numbness and tingling. I think they do well with an EMG, and if they willing to sign off it, then you can do on the patients in house, but you can also do it in the physician's facility, do it externally, and make that a business as well. And I know there are plenty of people that have done that and done very well. Profit margins are a lot better, by the way.
Yeah.
And some of that diagnostic testing in physicians' offices. You get set up in an ortho clinic or a podiatrist clinic once or twice a week. They'll fill your schedule with EMGs. You just give them an invoice on a per test basis, and they do pretty well.
Yeah. Well, and it takes away a lot of the headache. I know a buddy of mine owns a pediatric clinic. He's a PA, and he and his physician friend own a pediatric clinic, and they're getting somebody to do the same basic thing, but for allergy testing. And the guy that's doing the allergy testing, or the group that's doing the allergy testing, is just charging them a flat rate per test, basically. And they're not dealing with any of the billing or anything. They just give the pediatricians an invoice at the end of the month, and their headache's basically done after they do the test. So setting up the same model for EMGs seems like a pretty an easier way to do it without having to deal with your own billing and your own denials and all of that in house.
Yeah. It takes a lot of work. The EMGs aren't, and that's the biggest obstacle to getting into something like this is it's not a weekend continuing education course and then you're off and running. I didn't really feel comfortable with my EMG tests, and I had mentorship. I had a mentor that reviewed every one of my tests after I completed them and my reports. And I didn't really feel comfortable until I got over like 200 tests, 200,
Yeah.
250. Um, then I was starting to feel more comfortable in number one, my skill set, but also my impressions that were coming from the data that I received. So that's the one thing that's difficult about it. It's a little bit of a mountain to climb.
Yeah. So I guess somebody wants to do this. They're listening. They're like, oh, I own a PT clinic. Maybe I'll do EMGs, or I'm interested in it. Kind of what's that first step? Are there certification courses or training courses out there that are more than just a weekend continuing ed? Is there like, are we
Mhm.
talking a series of weeks or months of training before you're actually doing an EMG, or how does that typically work?
Yeah, I don't know how many organizations are out there training right now. Like I said, the one that I did was through Hands-On Diagnostics. Um, and they're based out of New York, and their model is much more of a franchise model.
Uh-huh.
So it's not just the training; you're going to actually quote unquote own a territory and that kind of stuff. There's also the American Academy of Clinical Electrophysiologists, AACE, but I think they also run their partners with Hands-On Diagnostics. Rocky Mountain University used to have a program. I don't think it's been going for a couple of years, but they're talking about bringing back up again. And so, because I know the founders were electrophysiologist PTs of
Yeah.
the university itself, and so they're looking about, and they used to train PTs and EMGs, and so they're looking at bringing it back. There are other organizations that maybe are, and so these organizations that I'm talking about are pretty much PT specific. There are organizations that are outside of the PT scope that train techs
Anybody?
and
Yeah.
yeah, PAs and MDs and DOs and EMGs. And so I just don't know what those
Yeah.
organizations are. Honestly, like I said, I did it through Hands-On Diagnostics, and so I don't have a lot of exposure to the others, but there are others,
Okay.
and the prices vary significantly, but also what you're getting varies significantly because you really do want to have some kind of mentorship, someone who's reviewing your reports and giving you feedback, and someone you can ask questions of.
Yeah. Okay. And then from a business model, we already kind of discussed doing it in-house versus doing it in the clinic, or the clinicians or the providers' offices. Um, are there any, I guess, concerns about, kickbacks or like self referrals, or any of that that you should be aware of when you're starting this? Like, oh, I'm going to do, you're coming for a wrist sprain, and oh, maybe we'll do an EMG just to rule out carpal tunnel, and or whatever they, I'm sure people are thinking of the ways that you can milk the system, right?
Well, there could be, but I think it's pretty easy to substantiate medical necessity.
Yeah.
When you have someone, if you have someone with numbness and tingling, there is a question for nerve damage, and I think that's okay. That in and of itself, I think would be alone to substantiate medical necessity to rule out what's going on. And especially take for example, numbness and tingling in the hand. Where could numbness and tingling in the hand come from?
Yeah.
If you're
Everywhere.
thinking
Yeah.
differential, if you're thinking differential diagnoses, there's all kinds of stuff that could be happening. It could be median nerve, it could be ulnar nerve, it could be radial nerve, it could be brachial plexus thing, it could be a radiculopathy, it could be a polyneuropathy from their
Yeah.
diabetes that they have. It could be, and even if I said ulnar nerve, is it a compression of the ulnar nerve at Guyon's Canal, or is it the cubital tunnel, right? Yeah, and so, or is it further up the arm? Who knows? But that that alone would, as an example, would be enough medical necessity to say, if I'm going to treat this as a physical therapist, I need to know what I'm treating and where, because my approach is going to be different. My plan of care is going to be different,
Exactly.
depending on the diagnosis or what comes back and where the nerve damage is. And if there's any nerve damage at all, right?
Yeah.
Maybe this is a trigger point issue more so than any nerve damage at all. So I think it's pretty easy typically to substantiate medical necessity in that regard. I have to put in a plug for musculoskeletal ultrasound as well,
Uh-huh.
because it's one thing with an EMG to get information in regards to the health of the nerves in the periphery, but it's another thing to actually get the picture of what's happening. And I think musculoskeletal ultrasound is going to be taken up by the profession in general much more like dry needling has over the past 10
Uh-huh.
years. I think it's going to be pretty commonplace for physical therapists, and I hope it is. I'm kind of putting it out there into the universe,
Yeah.
but I'm hoping musculoskeletal ultrasound becomes more ubiquitous because there's so much we can do with it, and not just related to nerve injuries, but the pictures you can get of the rotator cuff
Yep.
to guide your treatment are just so helpful, so helpful to determine if you can really make some significant difference, or if they need to have surgery, or if they have carpal tunnel symptoms. Take a picture of the nerve as it goes through as it passes through the carpal tunnel. I mean, is it really compressed? Is it inflamed? Is it scarred? What's going on in there? Is there not a bunion? What's it called? Ganglion,
Yeah.
that could be impinging upon it. Well, no matter how much physical therapy you do, nothing's going to change that ganglion, right? So they need to have surgery, and then they
It
can come
helps
back
guide
to
the
you.
treatment. Yeah.
It's that kind of stuff that I think these diagnostic tests will help our profession in a huge way, and to really become the gatekeepers that I think the APTA wants us to become, or said that we should become by 2020. If we don't have some diagnostic tools in our back pocket like these, then I don't think that we're really truly becoming the musculoskeletal gatekeepers that we should be.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad to hear you plug the musculoskeletal ultrasound. I have a friend who she contracts with, it's not workman's comp, but she goes directly to employers and does that on site with their people.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's like
Oh,
once a
awesome.
month she comes, she screens everybody. We've got like a chicken processing plant, so she's checking everybody's rotator cuff, their carpal tunnels,
Nice.
and she's like just from she's a one of those people that has like all the data and tracks it all and has a spreadsheet, but she's
Mhm.
able to show like, listen, we came and we did these diagnostic ultrasounds in your clinic. We were able to catch 15 of your people before they developed something that required surgery or more time out, and there's a
Nice.
lot of value add for being able to catch it
Wow.
early. And something like the musculoskeletal ultrasound lets you do that, which is cool.
That's
So
super cool. I hadn't heard of that before. But I have had a friend of mine, and he's been on my podcast, Bart McDonald in Idaho. He uses musculoskeletal ultrasound, or he trains all of his providers on it. And every shoulder that comes in is going to get an ultrasound, no matter what,
yeah,
because he just finds too often um, that there are issues, or there aren't issues that they thought might be there, that allows them to look in other places, right? And he said it just becomes a filtering system for them that's just been too helpful to not do. And so the cool thing is they'll take the pictures at the initial evaluation. They'll take another picture 6 weeks later, and compare. And what's really cool is you can actually
the
how
improvement.
see your impact of therapy on that patient's rotator cuff tendon. Like here it was at this point. It was this there. Here's this fraying. Um, there's this much tear, and then 6 weeks later, some of that's filled in. Look at that; it's an improvement, and you can just all see it visually. It makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool deal. Well, we're nearing the hour here. So I always end with this. Obviously, we'll give a plug to the podcast and your coaching and all that in the show notes. But if there's just one thing you want someone to walk away with, or someone to walk away with from the episode, maybe about using diagnostics, or maybe just about being a PT clinic owner in general, what would it be?
Wow. One thing that would be, so I'm assuming that your audience is similar to mine, in that these are typically clinic owners
Yep.
who are probably treating most of the time, if not all the time, and running the business on the side.
A lot of the time.
Does
Yeah.
that sound about right? Yeah. So my mantra is three things: reach out, step out, and network. So number one, reach out, get some help. If you're an owner of a business, remember you're an owner first and a technician, or what otherwise a physical therapist, second. You need to learn how to become a business owner. Know your KPIs, take responsibility for all the crap that's going on in your business, and learn how to be a better leader, right? Run it like a real business / organization. And if you're wanting to make $1 million, run it like $1 million company, even if you're making 200,000. People don't start running $1 million company when they make $1 million, they run it like $1 million company
Yeah, and
in
that
order
helps
to
them get
make,
there.
in order to get there, right? So reach out and get some help. Number two, step out, get out of patient care. And it doesn't have to be entirely, but start with a minimum 1 to 2 half days a week, right? Start there. I like to say that your business's love language is quality time. And if you're not giving it quality time, it's not going to pay you back, right?
Yeah.
So give it some quality time to review your metrics, talk to your team, coach your team, hold your team accountable, look at your metrics, make marketing plans if that's what you need to do, make recruiting plans. That's the big issue nowadays. We can't find therapists, but have a strategy for recruiting and work on that in those half days. So take 2 half days out of your work week to work on your business, not a Saturday and not a Sunday during the week, right? And then network. You're not alone. I mean, a lot of times you can be an owner, you feel like you're on an island, just kind of swimming up against the grain all by yourself. There are a ton of resources out there. And it's one thing to read the books and read the articles and get the emails. It's another thing to interact with other small business owners one on one in
We're
person.
doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, do that. Join a local, what is it, BNI as a networking group. We were part of entrepreneurs organization called Accelerator for businesses that made less than $1 million. And none of those people in my group were physical therapists. They were other small business owners. And surprisingly, we all have the same issues,
Yeah.
just in different industries. And they have some solutions for you in your industry, even though they're not PTs, right? And usually it's about how you should act as an owner, not necessarily how you should run your business. And so that's really helpful to talk to other owners. But even the American Physical Therapy Association, the APTA, has the peer-to-peer networks where they will group PT owners from different parts of the country to become mastermind groups, and they can determine how often and how frequently they need to meet, but they're able to collaborate with each other and network. And that's super helpful and will help. And everyone's businesses just seem to improve as we work together on this thing. It's the 1 + 1 = 3 type of situation.
Yeah.
So reach out, step out, network.
Awesome. Cool deal. And where can people find you, find the podcast if they want to look up Rise Diagnostics?
Yeah. So the website is ptoclub.com. I'm on LinkedIn, of course. The podcast, I've been doing podcasts for about 4.5 years now, about the time that I started doing the podcast. And what I do, like you, I interview successful PT owners or people in the industry to share successful actions and what they think about what's going on and how to improve as business owners. Has nothing to do with patient care. It's all about business ownership. So I've been doing that for about 4 years. We probably have about 300 episodes out there. And I think they're pretty quality episodes, if I do say so myself. So you can check that out. That's on Apple and Stitcher and Sound. It's Physical Therapy Owners Club. Just punch that into your podcast app and you should be able to find us pretty quickly. And then if you want to reach out to me directly, it's Nathan@ptoclub.com.
Cool deal. Well, Nathan, thanks so much for sharing your time, man.
Rafi, I'm so excited that you asked me to come on your show. I don't get to be a guest so often, so that's kind of cool.
Tables have turned, yeah.
Right. I love it. I love what you're doing.
All right, take it easy, man.
Thank you.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Nathan Shields. He's obviously got his hand in a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I love meeting with and talking with other PT practice owners, mainly just to satisfy my own need and desire to, like he said, network. I think those 3 points that he gave at the very end are the key. If you don't walk away with anything else from this episode, reach out, step out, and network are basically what we could name this episode. I think it's great. A lot of times, and I've come across this tons, even now that I'm doing a lot of work in the healthcare technology space, working with clinicians who've stepped into some kind of management or founder role in a tech company. Running a business can be very lonely. A lot of times, especially in the clinical world, many clinicians, and we've talked about this, I can't remember what episode we talked about this on. I'm going to have to go dig it up and I'll put it in the show notes. But like the risk profile of clinicians, maybe it was the Build Your Team episode. And the guest, Dr. Neal, said, if you think about it, most people go into healthcare, many people go into healthcare for a couple reasons. One, they see it as a calling or a vocation. They want to serve. This is how they're going to make their mark on the world, or the world a better place because of them having been in it. And that's wonderful and great. And they've also been told that healthcare is a safe, secure, stable job, right? It's a safe, secure, stable career. There are always going to be sick people. There's always going to be need for licensed clinicians. So what that means is that there's a skewed risk profile, if you would, for clinicians to be employed in an organization as opposed to starting an organization, starting a clinic, starting a software company or something like that, and stepping out into the role of entrepreneurship, because there's a lot more uncertainty there. And many clinicians don't like that uncertainty. I mean, anybody who has tried to change the workflows of a clinic or implement a new EMR or home exercise program or anything like that, a new way of doing things, understands the challenge that clinicians don't like change. They don't like uncertainty. So being able to step out to get some assistance, but then also networking with other people who are in the same journey. They might not be at the same point in the journey. They might be doing something totally different. I was on a call the other day with a physical therapist who runs a technology company, a software company, an app basically. And they had the same kind of questions and uncertainties around certain functions and parts of their business as a clinic owner that I was talking to an hour before. So a lot of the insight and a lot of the value in networking is not so much that you're going to learn how to run your specific business better, but as Nathan said, you get some insight into how to be a business owner, which I think is very valuable. So hopefully that helps. We've already run long enough, so I'm going to end it here. If you like the show, head on over to iTunes, leave us a rating and review. It helps people find us. If you want to be notified when we drop new episodes, head on over to www.betteroutcomes.show and sign up there. We'll send you the show notes, links to our guests, connections, websites, LinkedIn, all of that kind of stuff. And if you are a practice owner and you're looking to square up some of maybe your marketing and or your technology implementation in your clinic, head on over to rehabupracticesolutions.com, click on what we do, and read a little bit about us. I'd love to have a conversation with you and see if there's any way I can help. Until the next time, folks, be safe, be healthy. I will talk to you then.
Thanks for listening to the Better Outcomes Show, where we explore the possibilities of a new healthcare. Our hope is that you walk away from each episode informed, equipped, and empowered to push the boundaries in your own practice or business. We want to give you the tools to help you build strong, long-lasting relationships with your patients and clients, helping meet their goals, improve their health, and achieve better outcomes. Learn more at www.rehabilitationpracticesolutions.com. We'll catch you on the next episode.